If you're into anthologies, animation, or Star Wars, the second season of the Star Wars animated anthology, Star Wars Visions, is arriving just in time for May the 4th. It's 9 different stories with different approaches and tones, but is it a satisfying watch? Season 2 of the animated anthology brings a new collection of Force-based stories, with each director drawing on different animation styles to tell their tale. So if you've seen Season 1, you know what to expect. Varied styles of animation and short-form stories, all based in the Star Wars universe. The second season brings in influences from anime, paint, 2D flat, as well as 3D, and even stop motion. Now, the stories themselves vary in intensity and depth, but each of them chooses a particular focus and style to present. The episodes range in length from about 11 minutes to about 18 minutes in total runtime, so to binge all 9 of them isn't going to take very long. Now for me, some were much more exciting than others, and some were also more emotionally engaging than others. But what was true across the board was the creative styles that were chosen, each beautiful in their own ways. Now, because none of these are connected to each other, you can watch them in pretty much any order you choose. Now, I went chronologically, but there's no really wrong way to watch. Now, I want to briefly touch on each of the episodes to give you an idea of what to expect in terms of styling and story tone. First, with episode 1 called Sith, this features a painted animation style, mixed with an almost rotoscoped look. There's a small amount of realism to it, while also being clearly animated. I love the use of color in this. While the backdrop is mainly white for a large portion of the story, there are also so many layers of colors that are interwoven throughout, sometimes making it look a bit like a Jackson Pollock painting that's on top of a Frank Lloyd Wright sketch. Now, the presentation, it also has some of a feel of a modern Western, mixed with some very exciting and well-crafted action. And there's a battle that is just cinematically epic, making this an extremely strong start to the second season. I mean, from story to visuals, the entire thing is awesome. Episode 2 is called Screecher's Reach, and the animation, it's similar to the film Wolfwalkers. It's a hand-drawn style with some excellent use of shadowing, especially when firelight illuminates the characters. And it also makes sense that this would feel a bit like Wolfwalkers because the director of this episode was a producer for that film. The story has a dark undertone mixed with some sadness, and I would love to see this story continue to find out what becomes of the main character, Kina. There's a great deal of potential to make this into a long-form episode or even a movie, and it would be cool to see how this tied into the rest of the universe. The third episode is called In the Stars, and the stop motion is fantastic. Character design mixed with spectacular camera movements make this very cinematic and beautiful to watch. And the attention to detail is impressive, from drops of water to firefly-like visuals. I mean, all of the textures, they're just enveloping. And the environmental commentary that's woven into the story, it feels organic and natural, pulling in the culture of struggling indigenous people who have been oppressed by the Empire. And it's an emotional ride, but one that's also uplifting despite all the darkness. Episode 4 is the Aardman episode, called I Am Your Mother. Now, it's cute and comedic, just as you might expect from that studio. The story's sweet, playing heavily on family ties, but also mixing in a bunch of humor. Now, it's not laugh-out-loud funny, but it made me smirk and smile. And there are also a lot of visual Easter eggs that are just fun to pick up on. This is also the shortest episode of the season, at only 11 minutes total. So without the credits and the intro, this is closer to about 9 minutes long. Still though, it is a good, lighthearted romp that pulls in some influences of the Phantom Menace. Episode 5 is called Journey to the Darkhead, and this one is very anime in its styling. There's a battle that takes place in a very high location, and the way that they frame the scope of the scene to just give us the context, it's haunting and also beautiful. And the action is what you'd expect from an anime, with characters fighting in sort of just this slow motion, which just allows for dramatic choreography as lightsabers are cutting through the air. The colors at times are very drab and dark, but then they're nicely offset by reds and the blues of lightsabers. Now, if you watch the Disney Plus series Obi-Wan Kenobi, there were some scenes that were very darkly lit, with the only illumination coming from Kenobi and Vader's lightsabers. And this is similar in that visual, which I think was great to watch. In the story, it's also a fun one, putting in some twists that really increase the tension and the peril. The Spy Dancer is episode 6, and it features a flat, hand-drawn style where the characters lack a lot of details, which makes them more comic book-like. But the lack of extreme details, that's not a negative. It's actually a great visual style to employ. For example, when we see stormtroopers, they have soft features, where their armor is recognizable, but it doesn't contain sharp angles or intricate details. And there's also the awesome use of music and choreography, which create a stunning and emotional story arc filled with peril and deep character conflict. And the story, it's actually very emotional, using the small amount of time that it has to connect us with the characters in intimate ways. Episode 7 is called The Bandits of Golok, and this is another story that has a lot of emotional depth to it as we follow a young man and his force-sensitive younger sister as they work to evade some Imperial forces. The animation style is CGI, with shading and styling that looks somewhat like video game cutscenes. And there's great use of shadowing to not only create depth, but also make the scenes more mysterious and foreboding. While there's some good action that takes place within this, there's an unexpected sequence that immediately grabbed my attention, and it put a huge smile on my face. I mean, it's not a long scene, but it's very effective in conveying excitement. The penultimate episode is called The Pit, and this is another one that features a distinctly anime style of animation. The theme is quite dark and a bit harrowing, but it's also a great one to watch, especially because the main character is voiced by Daveed Diggs, and it's just his smooth voice is just awesome to listen to. Now, the story is a great social commentary without being preachy or obvious, creating an atmosphere that started out dire but then becomes inspiring. There's also a sequence towards the end that will most certainly remind you of a very popular movie as the character works to overcome an extreme obstacle. Now, finally, with episode 9, we have Ao's Song. This is another stop-motion episode that I'm pretty sure is not computer-generated, but instead utilizes felt characters where you can see the fibers on their faces, their clothes, and their skin. The story is all about how kyber crystals were once corrupted by the Sith, but could be restored to their harmonious state through singing. So first and foremost, the animation, it's absolutely stunning. The visuals are rich with color where the world is just alive in front of us. The theme of the story is all about faith and belief in one's abilities and talents, especially when those around you don't see the potential. And I love how uplifting the overall arc is, especially when combined with an animation style that creates a very sympathetic and even relatable character. So overall, Star Wars Visions Season 2 delivers a wonderful varied anthology filled with creative expertise and engaging storytelling. It's inspiring to see new takes on a familiar universe, showing us different visions and characters that are rich for exploration. I wish some of the episodes were longer to more fully explore the stories, but they still create engaging narratives with stunning visuals and emotional arcs. There's no sex or nudity, a tiny bit of profanity, and a lot of animated violence. I give Star Wars Visions Season 2 4.5 out of 5 couches. So are there any animated movies or series that you've seen lately that have just been stellar? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.